Hello and welcome to the Bobby and Beardy Show. He's Beardy.
And this guy's Bobby.
I mixed it up on you. And we're here to talk about Dune Part 2. Oh, Beardy, how are you today?
I am very good, very tired. It's been a long day at work. But other than that, can't complain. How are you?
I'm not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Been doing lots of DIY over the last couple of days, preparing to do 2 rooms at once. Nah, regrets.
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't bite off when you can chew.
Shall we crack on with the show?
I think so. Yes.
Right, here's some rundown for you. Dune Part 2 is a science fiction epic directed by Denis Villeneuve. The screenplay was adapted from the 1965 novel Dune by Frank Herbert and was co-written by Denis Villeneuve and John Spates. You'll be surprised to know that it's the sequel to the 2001 film Dune being called...
Shock. Like, who would know?
I'm a mine of information. Absolutely packed cast. Starring, you got Timothée Chalamet, you got Zendaya, you got Rebecca Ferguson, you got Josh Brolin, you got Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Drax, also just Batista from the wrestling worlds, Javier Bardem, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken, and Lea Seydoux, to name some.
There's
Budget.
A lot more. Yeah, it's
just everyone is packed. It's ridiculous. How can you cram more famous people into this film?
They could try.
And I'm sure they will in future films, potentially. The budget, $190 million dues. No, it's not Australian, it's American. The box office, according to the Box Office Mojo, from about half an hour ago, is currently sitting at $182 million worldwide.
Wow.
So it's about to break its budget. Well, its filming budget. Interestingly, I checked it up before. Dune 1 had the budget of $165 million and made $434 million.
Yes.
In 2001, post-pandemic, when the cinemas were not doing too good.
Yeah.
So you probably expected to do a lot better. It's got a runtime of 2 hours and 45 minutes. Why do I mention that? No reason. We'll come back to it.
Yeah, of course not. No.
10 minutes longer than Dune Part 1. Beardy, give us some rundown on the old story, please.
So, as you say, it's kind of following on from Dune Part 1, shock horror. It follows Paul Atreides, whoa, words.
Don't remember that character.
Paul Atreides and the fall of the Atreides family. It's the aftermath. Him and his mother are out in the deserts of Arrakis, meeting the Fremen, being accepted into the Fremen...
Society.
Thiefs? Whatever they call the cities, the population holds. Anyway, not
Tribes.
Important. It comes after he has just earned his way in by fighting Jamis one-on-one, which is a big plot point, which I do want to discuss later, which they don't do it justice. However, it's him fulfilling prophecies, trying to fight his destiny, different warring families. It's, as you say, it's an epic. It's very reminiscent of when I watched Lord of the Rings and how that made me feel. It has the same feel to it, but sci-fi rather than fantasy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I feel like I need to say, before we go any further, that I didn't like Dune Part 1.
And this is why I don't like you.
So let me put my point of view out there, because then we can continue the conversation. I've never read any of the books. I've never seen any of the other media, because there's been TV shows and films and stuff. I didn't enjoy the first one. I found it very long, incredibly slow paced, and quite frankly, I felt that nothing really happened to justify the runtime. I was bored. Maybe I just saw it on the wrong day. Who knows? But I do not rewatch films, like regardless of whether I like them or hate them. So I'm very much a you gotta hit me right.
So 2 things. Firstly, obviously, this is one book broken into 2 films.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, when other films have done that, they have paced it badly, or there's been times where one book does need to be 2 films and it feels a bit rushed. So I think they tread a difficult ground on this. They, in my opinion, do a good job. Yes, it does do a lot of scene setting and world setting, but it needs to happen. Like, not everyone knows the world of Dune, or the cinematic world of it. Obviously, there's a lot of being cinematic for cinematic's sake, which takes some time. A lot of play on color, symmetry, and I want to go through that a bit later. I do think that the second one does feel a bit better paced. It is a bit faster, but I don't dislike the first. I did do a back-to-back first second on the weekend. I liked the first more than I did when I first saw it, and number two is better.
I agree. First, the second one is a lot better. I enjoyed this film. So you know, there's all my cards on the table. Didn't enjoy the first one. Slow and plodding. Looked gorgeous. Sounded gorgeous. Yes. Like honestly,
the sound design
stunning, which is a trait that continues on into this film. It's so pretty. Although there's so much dust and sand everywhere. Half the time you can't see anyway. But that's the point. When you can see, pretty. There's some sunset shots with like moons and things or whatever, and you're just like, wow, that's real. That's real bloody nice.
Kind of the beauty of it in the shots where you can see, and even when you can't see, they do a lot of play with focus. Even in a shot where you should be able to see, they use the focal length of the cameras they're using to add a lot of stylization to it, which I really enjoyed. Obviously, coming from my background.
Yeah, there's a scene on the Harkonnen home planet, and it has just a completely different color palette to the rest of the film, and it took my brain a little while to figure out what was going on there, to be honest. And I went, "Oh my god, what's going on?" But I really liked it. Absolutely dug it. It really makes Austin Butler's character pop, like his mouth and eyes, and he's a crazy boy.
It's supposed to play on the fact that the Harkonnens are a pale race, a pale people, but it also kind of nicely balances the fact that Dune is an arid planet. What's it called? Arrakis is a barren planet, but even that has more color, which I quite like.
Yeah. Well, I'll just list off some things I really enjoyed about it. So it's gorgeous. The cinematography is incredible. It's atmospheric as all hell, and that's mostly down to, well, it's not mostly down, it's partially down to the sound. The score by Hans Zimmer is just wonderful, but even though it's mostly just ambience for the majority of the time, it's like drones and synths, and at times you're like, wow, these drones are really keeping me on edge in these times. It was either that or the person talking to themselves behind me. I'm not entirely sure who was keeping me on edge the most.
Obviously the score is fantastic. The way they use sound to marry with the picture, obviously, as films do, but they do it in such a interesting way. But I do think the score in the first film was better.
Well, you've just watched them back to back, so I'll take your word on that.
Yeah. Well, my other half also preferred it in the first one. She's read the books. I realise there's no music in the books, so it means nothing.
Play the CD, but read quick.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for my notes here. So, without getting into spoilers, because we're going to do spoilers in a bit. Oh, time code below if you just want to skip straight to spoilers. By the way, forgot to say that in the intro. Awful lot of riding on big worms, ain't there?
But to be fair, they should. The fact that they kind of added it in at the end of the first film isn't right. Having it in the second is kind of necessary to the story. It kind of pushes Paul Atreides' character to being more accepted by the Fremen people, even by Chani, which is Zendaya's character in this. And even some of like the non-believers, Shishakli, I think her name was. I'm going to say yes to that because that sticks in my mind for some reason.
I'll be honest, I can't remember anyone's names. I'm mostly going on actors.
But it is interesting how it obviously ties into this sort of culture and religion that they have. And I do want to discuss this idea of like a forced religion, a prophecy that is made rather like all prophecies are made, I guess, but made by the subsect of the, what are they called? Bene Gesserit?
Yes.
Yes.
I wrote it down somewhere. It's on my notes somewhere. I've got the word somewhere, but I can't. It's not.
Yeah, it is interesting that a whole culture, at least half the culture, can be so controlled by something that was implanted, but still sort of self-fulfilling and fits to progress their story. I don't want to say too much without going to the spoilers.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of talking about prophecy, which is by the locals. which has been kind of set up as quite a lot of the Dune universe, a lot of specific breeding, a lot of specific like drops of information across the galaxies to push things in certain directions. There's lots of prophecy. There's lots of space witches. There's lots of manipulation by individuals and groups. But can we just dial it back to the worms? How do they get off them?
Well, no, so it's loads of stuff with worms. I assume they just ask the worm nicely to stop.
It doesn't look like they're riding in them in a particularly nice way. They've got hooks in them, and they're like,
oh yeah.
And like at some points, this is fine. This isn't spoilers. At some points, they've got like they're traveling in en masse, and they're like because these worms are huge, and you know, there's lots of them on there. How do they stop? Cowards for not showing me. That's all I'm saying.
I also don't understand. Like, obviously, the sandworms, they come out of the sand as you'd expect, eat giant metal pieces of machinery, a hell of a load of sand and dust and spice. Where does that go? Like, they must fill up eventually.
They've got to be pooping that back out, surely. All that dust and stuff.
But then they're not a worm; they're just a tube, like a straw.
But how do this is going to sound like a dumb question. How do fish eat without swallowing water? It's got to be the same sort of thing, right? You know, sand and yeah, whatever. I sound like a lunatic.
They had some sort of like I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into fish biology. I assume there's a way for them to pass water out and keep the food, but I honestly don't know. And I realize
so it's going to be the same for the big space worms, who sometimes come directly up and sometimes come like a flipping killer whale.
Like a
worm. Here is a not really spoiler, but semi-spoiler. It's quite a few non-climactic deaths. Just like, that person's gone. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
And also, I must admit, I found myself looking at Austin Butler a few times and thought, you kind of just look like a bald Jared Leto Joker, don't you? Without a
little bit
the stuff.
He also had a very Skarsgård brother quality to him as well. I for a long time wasn't sure.
Yeah, one of the Skarsgårds, whichever one it was considered for the role. So,
really?
But yeah, I'm laughing at Austin Butler there for looking a bit like Jared Leto. He's really good. They're all really good. That's the thing about the cast. They're all really good
cast. What I like about it is as well that they've got this massive cast, but they share the screen time really well. Like, no one, other than obviously the main characters because they have to, but no one dominates. Like, you've got Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, Stellan Skarsgård, Christopher Walken, massive names who have been around for a long time, and they don't pander to that. They don't give them more screen time than they needed, which is, I think, it's brilliant. That's the way it should be. Like, keep to the story. There's a whole slew of films, TV series, whatever, that at the moment deviate and don't keep to the story just because they want to go, well, this person's popular right now. Do you want to see more of them?
Absolutely. They may have cast a big name, but it might not be the biggest character in the film. So they're like, well, you're sticking to what you need to do. We're not gonna just push you into every scene, which is fine, which is great.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm almost done with non-spoilers. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, there's stuff that I could discuss that technically isn't a spoiler, but it'd be easier to discuss as a spoiler section. So,
all right, cool.
I would prefer to move on to spoilers.
Let's move on over to spoilers then. I'm getting a thumbs up from old Bobby.
100% a thumbs up. Fantastic.
For a film that I initially went into thinking I'm going to watch this film in an attempt to justify watching the first one because I didn't like it. I'm glad I did.
Yep.
Because I did enjoy it. I know I get, like you kind of hinted at earlier, the first one does all the world building so that this one can start to move a bit on its own.
How do you feel about the fact there's several books? So
there's 6 books in total.
That's several.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be a third Dune film, which is going to be the second book in the series, which I believe is called Dune Messiah. I may or may not have done some research. Let's do spoilers! Anyway, thumbs up, like I said. So, yeah, lead the way.
So the main thing I want to discuss more than anything else, again, coming from my background, looking at sort of cinematography, sound design, how they really played quite heavily with elemental sounds in it. Obviously, the dust, the wind, really, really well done in a decent theatre with decent speakers at home. That's going to sound outstanding. but I also liked their clear absence of sound when it wasn't needed for effect.
I love it when
So
films
the
do that.
fight, yeah. Well, obviously they did it in Oppenheimer with the explosion where nothing happens, then suddenly the wind hits and it's fantastic. When Paul Atreides is fighting Fayed Rautha, Austin Butler's character.
Thank you. You know I don't know the names.
I know you
Why
don't.
Are you trying to make me look bad?
I'm just trying to remember them. I'm going to pronounce these terribly, but anyway, the climactic fight, which is obviously nearing the end, and they have nothing but steps and knives hitting each other. The absence of dramatic music makes it feel more impactful and more dramatic.
Yeah.
Which I love. Like, sound design is fantastic. The ornithopters, which are basically dragonfly planes, they sound, I don't like using this word, but just crispy, and they scratch an itch in my brain for the sound, which I quite like.
Yeah, they're satisfying to watch fly, aren't they? They were obviously in
impractical
as
hell, but
yeah, quite a lot of the ships are really impractical actually. When you start looking at them,
big sphere.
Emperor turns up at some point. And you're like, why is this like? I know you want to look cool, but this is get a Star Destroyer, mate. Honestly, come on,
get a Star Destroyer.
Just get a Star Destroyer. It's that simple.
With something you touched on as well, going through the artistic style of it, the Harkonnen planet where they do very monochromatic, everything's blacks and whites, maybe little bits of greys. It's very impactful. But as I say, that play on color makes the Arrakis and the Dune planet more colorful in comparison. You've got the blues, you've got the golds and browns. Suddenly, this arid, barren place now is full of life, which then is very different from the first planet, which is all water and greens. And it's just interesting where they can use color and how they use color. And like you say, with the eclipses, using that symmetry in a lot of places.
Very nice
beautiful.
Sunsets and things, yeah. Very
nice sunset.
Very nice patterns and stuff. Yeah, no, you got the two moons coming in over the sun, so you got like a crescent either side.
Yeah,
I love it. I'll quickly touch back on the non-climactic deaths thing while we're talking about towards the end of the film. I thought Stellan Skarsgård, who's the Baron of the Harkonnens, bit of an anticlimactic moment. Just kind of, does he fully die? Does he? Because he kind of climbs some steps, looks at some steps.
No, so he gets attacked by the Emperor's people.
He gets hacked down,
and then. Yeah, but then Atreides walks in and stabs him in the neck.
Of course he does. I'm forgetting the whole thing, which is actually one of my next points. And yeah, so I thought his okay. So it's not the most. He gets hacked down and he's kind of left, and then it comes back to him. And then
but it is anticlimactic for what is the main protagonist.
Yeah,
or antagonist. Sorry, antagonist.
And then an old Dave Bautista, he gets mugged off by Josh Brolin. He does. He's like, "You again, dickhead? Oh, I'm dead. I've been stabbed. I've lost." Dave Bautista's character in this film is pretty useless. I'm gonna be honest.
I might be reading too much into this, but for me, it comes from an anticlimax of revenge. Like, a lot of the deaths in this are very ceremonious, and these aren't based on a need. It's a want. This is, I want to get revenge based on my father, my family, my Duke. And I think they do quite a good job of, it's important, but they don't give it too much importance. But again, I could be reading too much into that. It's just how I felt with it.
To me, it was like, oh, you're dead. All right, move on.
But they do. I was going to say, in the both the films combined, they do add quite significant deaths. Obviously, Atreides' father, the Duke, I can't remember his name on this one. His death is built up over 20 minutes.
Oscar Isaac. That's his official on-screen name.
That's what he is in the film. His death is very important, and like I say, it's been over 20 minutes. And the Jamis one, I know it's in the first film technically, but it's a very important death. The film starts with the ceremony of taking the body back. Like, they make a whole section of it be based on the death. The death itself might be quite unimpressive, but how important it is giving the water back, water that they can't use. It does open up a plot line they should have gone to, and they didn't. So in the books, Jamis's family, it's very much a keep what you kill. So Paul Atreides is supposed to like get his wife and children, very much as like you're my wife now. It's a not like a servitude, but an indentured. I don't know how to put it, but they're supposed to be involved. They're supposed to be shown, and Paul Atreides uses them to help integrate with the Fremen people. And it's a whole plot line which they don't even bring up. And it could have been a 5-minute thing in a 2.5-hour film. But
well, I'm not sure if I haven't read it, so I don't know the ins and outs. But I feel like they kind of used Zendaya's character to be the leader of leading the way into his integration into the group, which works quite well at the end because in the classic king, duke, powerful lord type behavior, old Paul goes and attempts to marry the emperor's daughter for power, not love. He might tell Zendaya that he'll always love her, but let me tell you, Paul Atreides, actions, my friend, speak louder than words. You dirty dog. He's going for all the power. So, but I think the betrayal that in Zendaya's eyes works because she's kind of brought him in, despite not believing any of the Messiah nonsense. She kind of sees through it all as they're using the prophecies and things to control them, essentially, in a different form.
Which obviously they are, but heavy rests the crown situation. Like he didn't want this. It kind of was brought on by the Bene Gesserits, his mum, and the whole background. And it's got to a point now where I think he discusses billions of lives that are in his hands. And at what point do you have to take utilitarianism, the good of the many for the good of the one? He might want to be with Zendaya's character, but the right thing for the most people is to marry Florence Pugh.
See, I kind of read that differently, actually. Really? I thought for a lot of it, in the film, he was talking about how he didn't want power and things. But then the first opportunity he gets, like, really, he's going for it. He's an ambitious young boy.
Yeah, but his mindset on the power changes after he drinks the water of life. That poison, and Zendaya's character has to fulfill a prophecy by tears of the spring or something.
The desert spring, yeah, which is her name in what it means.
Fremen,
yeah.
But I don't think he actually wants it. It's just one of those situations now he sees the benefit to it and how it's going to help the galaxy, which is very grandiose to think, I have to be the one who saves the galaxy.
I reckon he's a bad dude. I reckon he's going to go power mad. I haven't read the books, but I reckon he's going to turn out to be a bit of a bastard. That's all I'm saying.
He absolutely could be. Like, dukedom and royal blood tends to have that. Obviously, again, going down the spoiler side of it, the Atreides side of his family is supposed to be very honourable, and it always has been. However, he is part Harkonnen.
Big reveal! Huge Big reveal!
And even the character that turns out is Harkonnen. Didn't even know she was Harkonnen! Biggest reveil! So that's obviously his mother who finds out that she's Harkonnen.
So but after drinking the poisoned worm water, they both, him and his mother, both realize that they're Harkonnen of heritage. She is the daughter of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, old snake boy himself, so making him Paul's grandfather. Did it change anything really, though? Or will it just change stuff later on, do you reckon? Because from my perspective, all it really changed was when he stabbed him. He was like, take that, grandfather, you bugger.
But they were leaning into it in part 1 and part 2 about how the Bene Gesserits have been blending bloodlines for ages. And if you take the Emperor's family and the Atreides family and the Harkonnen family, that's what 3 of the big 7 families, or some percentage like that are tied up in one coupling.
Yeah.
Which is huge. Realistically, if you're trying to unify a galaxy, you're already almost at 50% just by going, well, let's get married. And
well, that's all Paul's mum's fault, old Rebecca Ferguson, because she was going to give birth to a girl. I remember that. But went, nah, actually, I'm gonna have a son. Don't worry, don't mind me. Because she's a bit power hungry. She spends most of the film manipulating the masses and talking about prophets and stuff, and also talking to her unborn daughter. She's bloody mental, mate. She's bloody cuckoo. Tell you that.
But apparently they're supposed to be able to, like, because of them being the Bene Gesserits, like even Paul Atreides, Timothée Chalamet's characters, he can actually speak to his unborn sister as well.
Yeah, but he has a vision of her as well at one point too.
Yeah, and I thought that was just like a vision thing, which he has, but apparently he can actually talk to her in the same way that the mother can, which I didn't expect.
They don't really get that
off what I've
across in
been
the
told.
film. They kind of have it. He's talking through mum to,
Yeah,
and it's almost played off as, like, you know when one of those classic scenes in a film where when you tell mum that I'm not talking to her, and then the dad turns to her and goes,
yes,
it felt like that a little bit. Yeah. All right. Let's start to wrap up real quick. Sorry, if you've got anything more to say, let's say it. But on Bloodlines, let's not forget old Austin Butler, psychopath Austin Butler. There'll be a little version of him running around as well at some point, because he's seduced by yet another space witch, Leia Sadu, to continue a bloodline that way as well.
Yeah.
So
I do think the problem is with these two films together, you're looking at 5.5 hours. There's a lot to discuss. We're not going to cover everything. Sorry. There is a lot around sort of the prophecies and putting too much stock or belief in that. Javier Bardem's character is just like instantly, this guy, he is the guy for us.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's done it before as well. Like he's ready.
Yeah, no, 100%.
He's looking for the guy regardless.
It's the part of like blind faith, because it's like, well, this guy's the right guy, and it's like, well, he doesn't want it. It's like, that makes him all the right guy.
Which is really, that's religion. That's religion for you. It does talk.
We don't want to go down this route too much. Like, we don't want to...
religion and
controversial,
manipulation and just pushing things and all sorts of stuff. And it's and Zendaya's character is fully against it for the entire time. And she ends the film alone, riding a sandworm. How will she get off? I don't know. We'll figure it out. In the third one.
Honestly, you need to write them an email and be like, look, honestly, I need to know this. Everything else brilliant, but how? How do they get off?
I reckon there'll be a 25-minute scene in Dune Part 3 of Zendaya slowly dismounting a sandworm to make up for it not being in this film.
25 minutes.
Well, based on how long it takes everything else to happen in the Dune universe.
Wow.
Why to take their time?
No.
This film, by the way, I mentioned at the very start, is 10 minutes longer than Part 1, and it feels so much shorter than Part 1. Honest to me, anyway. But yeah.
I like the world building side. It might be one of the reasons that I like all the films that are starting a genre or starting off a franchise, sorry. Maybe why I like Madam Web and Venom and stuff like that, because I like world building, and I think there's a big world to build.
I mean, it's the reason why the Marvel Cinematic Universe did so well is because they at the start, it's because all their films were building blocks to this massive moment. Yeah. So yeah, I get it. It's just all right. This film gets a pass by me because normally anything over 2 hours, I'm like, too long a film. Which I'm sure I'll talk about many times in this podcast. Any final thoughts?
I've never heard this before.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up, Beardy?
No, it's all I can say really is obviously not knowing the source material all that well, but it's as close to a perfect film as I've seen in a while. I didn't hate any part of it. Like, the acting's fantastic, the cinematography is fantastic, the score is fantastic. I liked it. I was enthralled.
High praise. I liked it too. It's a good film. Yeah, I did enjoy it.
Very good.
And it's one of those films where you're like, if they made scenes shorter, it would sort of lose its thing. Like it's slow. It shows these long shots. It shows dust clouds moving across and things. It takes its time, and that's kind of one of its charms in a way. Once it's actually telling a story and not. I just felt like in Part 1 they didn't have enough to say for that long length of time. Anyway, we're not reviewing Part 1. Beardy, let's wrap it up there.
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We will see you very soon for another film. Farewell.
Bye-bye.